Welcome back. If this is your first time here, this channel is simple. At the end of your day, when the noise has settled and the world has finally gone quiet, we take one of the books that actually matters and we walk through it together. Slowly. No rush, no agenda. Just the ideas, delivered at the pace of someone who wants you to actually absorb them. So get comfortable. Let your body get heavy. And let's spend the next little while putting something worth keeping into your mind before you sleep. Tonight's book starts with a number. And the number is 4,000. 4,000 weeks. That is roughly how long a human life lasts if you are lucky enough to reach your 80s. 4,000 weeks from the moment you arrived in the world to the moment you leave it. Sit with that for a second. Not with dread, just with honesty. 4,000 weeks. Many of yours are already spent. The ones remaining are finite in a way that is not abstract or theoretical, but completely, quietly, undeniably real. Oliver Burkeman opens 4,000 weeks with this number, not to depress you but to wake you up. Because he believes, and makes a compelling case, that the reason most of us feel so perpetually overwhelmed, so constantly behind, so unable to be fully present in our own lives, is that we have never truly accepted this fact. We live as though time is a problem to be solved. As though if we just get organized enough, efficient enough, productive enough, we will eventually reach the point where everything is done, and we can finally relax, and finally be present, and finally begin to actually live. That moment, Burkeman says with great gentleness, is never coming. And understanding why it is never coming, and what to do instead, is the most liberating thing this book has to offer. Oliver Burkeman spent years writing about productivity. He had a column in The Guardian called "This Column Will Change Your Life." He read every time management book ever written. He tried every system, every app, every method. He interviewed productivity experts and efficiency gurus and people who had apparently cracked the code of getting more done. And after all of that, he came to a conclusion that surprised him. The productivity project is, at its root, a form of denial. A way of refusing to accept the fundamental reality of being a finite human being in a finite world with finite time. Every new system, every new hack, every new method of squeezing more into the hours of the day is underneath an attempt to escape the truth that you cannot do everything, that you will never do everything, that choosing to do one thing is always and unavoidably choosing not to do 10,000 other things. And we resist this truth with everything we have. Because accepting it requires something most of us have never been taught, and most of our culture actively discourages. It requires the willingness to be limited, to be finite, to be human in the full, humbling, magnificent sense of that word. Burkeman draws on the philosopher Martin Heidegger, who wrote about what he called our thrownness. The fact that we did not choose to be born, did not choose the time or place or circumstances of our arrival, did not choose the particular life we were thrown into. We simply found ourselves here, already in the middle of things, already shaped by forces we had no hand in creating. And Heidegger said that most of human life is spent in what he called the they-self, living the life that one does, doing what people do, following the unexamined expectations of the culture, the family, the era, without ever stopping to ask whether any of it reflects a genuine, chosen engagement with the particular, unrepeatable life you have been given. Burkeman uses this not to make you feel bad about how you have lived, but to ask a genuinely important question. If your time is limited and you cannot do everything, what do you actually want to do with it? Not what should you do. Not what would look impressive or responsible or productive. What, in the deepest and most honest part of you, actually matters? Because that question, simple as it sounds, is one that most people never really ask. They are too busy managing their inboxes and their calendars and their to-do lists. Too busy trying to get on top of things. Too busy preparing to live to actually live. Let's talk about what Berkman calls the efficiency trap, because this is one of the most immediately recognizable ideas in the book, and one that will probably make you feel seen in a way that is both uncomfortable and relieving. The efficiency trap works like this. You find a way to get through your email faster. Great. Now you can respond to more emails, which means more people know you are responsive, which means more people email you, which means you have more email than before you found the efficiency hack. Or you find a way to get your work done faster. Great. Now you can take on more work, which fills the time you saved, which means you are just as busy as before, but now with higher expectations attached. Every increase in efficiency creates more demand to fill the space that efficiency opens up. The to-do list never gets shorter, it gets longer as you get faster at doing it. Because the list is not a fixed set of tasks waiting to be completed. It is an infinite expanding frontier that grows in proportion to your capacity to address it. And this is not a time management problem. It is a reality problem. The reality being that there is always more that could be done than can ever be done. Always more worthy causes, more interesting projects, more people who need help, more experiences worth having than any one human life can contain. The only honest response to this reality is not better organization. It is what Berkman calls radical acceptance of your own finitude. The willingness to say, I cannot do everything, I will not do everything, and within that constraint, I will choose, as deliberately and as honestly as I can, what this particular and unrepeatable life will be about. Now Berkman introduces an idea that sounds almost heretical in our culture of optimization and growth. He says that the goal is not to get more done. The goal is to be more fully present with what you are actually doing. These sound like they might be the same thing. They are almost opposite things. Getting more done requires speed, efficiency, optimization. The constant sense that where you are is a stepping stone to where you need to be. It requires that you be, in every moment, partly somewhere else. Being present requires the opposite. It requires the willingness to be fully here, in this moment, with this task, with this person, with this ordinary, unremarkable experience, as though it were sufficient, as though it did not need to be a means to anything else, as though it were, in itself, enough. Berkman talks about what he calls the now that has no future, the experience of being so fully absorbed in something that time loses its ordinary quality of pressing forward. Athletes call this the zone. Musicians call it being in the flow. Parents sometimes experience it in certain moments with their children. Anyone who has ever been completely lost in a conversation, or a piece of music, or a walk in the rain knows the feeling. In those moments, the tyranny of the to-do list falls away. The sense of being behind dissolves. There is just this, and this is, it turns out, everything. Berkman says those moments are not accidental. They are available more often than we realize. But they require something the productivity mindset actively works against. They require that we stop treating the present moment as a resource to be optimized and start treating it as the place where life is actually happening. One of the most striking sections of the book addresses what Berkman calls the problem of the open loop, the way that unfinished tasks, unmade decisions, and unresolved situations sit in the background of consciousness, taking up mental space and generating a low-level anxiety that never quite goes away. You know this feeling. The project you have been meaning to start. the conversation you have been meaning to have, the thing you said you would do and haven't done, the decision you are not quite ready to make. They sit there, not loudly, but persistently, a background hum of incompleteness. Berkman's observation is that the open loop problem cannot be solved by closing all the loops, because there are always more loops opening than you can close. The inbox is infinite. The possibilities are infinite. The things you could be doing at any given moment are infinite. The solution he proposes is not to empty the list, but to make peace with the list never being empty. To recognize that the feeling of having too much to do is not a temporary condition that will resolve when you get on top of things. It is a permanent feature of being a finite person in an infinite world. And to recognize that this is, strange as it sounds, actually okay. Because the alternative, a life so empty of possibility that nothing is left undone, is not a life anyone actually wants. The fullness of your life, the richness of your obligations and relationships and projects and interests, is not the problem. It is the evidence of a life being lived. Berkman spends a beautiful section on what he calls patience, and why our culture has declared war on it. We live in an age of instant everything. Information arrives instantly. Entertainment arrives instantly. Food arrives instantly. Communication is instant. And we have come to expect, without quite noticing that we have come to expect it, that any gap between wanting something and having it is an inconvenience to be eliminated. But Berkman points out that almost everything worth having requires exactly that gap. The gap is not the obstacle. The gap is the process. The gap is where the thing becomes real. Learning an instrument takes years of patient repetition. Building a deep relationship takes years of patient presence. Developing genuine skill at anything takes years of patient practice. Writing a book that matters takes years of patient struggle with the material. And our intolerance for that gap, our desire to skip to the part where we already have the thing we want, is costing us the ability to experience any of those things fully. We are so focused on the destination that we cannot be present for the journey. And the journey, it turns out, is the entire thing. There is no destination that delivers what we thought it would. There is only the next journey and the next. Patience is not passive. It is the active choice to be present with the process, to let the thing take as long as it takes, to trust that being here, doing the work, showing up again and again, is not a lesser substitute for the achievement. It is the achievement. There is a section of the book on what Berkman calls cosmic insignificance therapy, and it is one of the most unexpectedly comforting things I have encountered in a book that is ostensibly about time management. He invites you to consider the scale of things. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. The Earth has existed for 4.5 billion of those years. Human civilization, in its entirety, is about 10,000 years old. Your life is 4,000 weeks. Your individual moment of reading these words is a duration so small relative to cosmic time that it cannot be meaningfully expressed as a fraction. And Berkman says, doesn't that feel a little bit like relief? Because if your life is so cosmically small, then the pressure you feel to make it count in some grand and measurable way is pressure that has no foundation in reality. The universe is not watching. History will not record whether you answered all your emails, or achieved all your goals, or lived up to all your potential. What this means is not that nothing matters. It is that you get to decide what matters. Within the brief and shining window of your existence, you get to choose where to point your attention and your care and your effort. Not because the cosmos demands it, but because you are here and conscious and capable of caring, and that, improbably and magnificently, is enough to make meaning possible. The smallness of your life is not its tragedy, it is its freedom. Berkman ends with what he calls 5 questions worth sitting with. Not questions with answers, questions to live with, questions that, if you return to them honestly and regularly, might help you spend the remaining weeks of your 4,000 more deliberately than you have spent some of the ones behind you. The first is, where in your life are you holding back? Waiting until you feel more ready or more certain or more qualified before you begin? Because the readiness you are waiting for is not coming. You begin from where you are, or you do not begin. The second is, what would you spend your time on if you knew you were already enough? If you did not need to prove anything to anyone, including yourself? What would a life look like that was not organized around demonstrating your worth, but around genuinely living it? The third is, where are you trying to avoid the discomfort of limitation? Where are you keeping your options open, refusing to commit, maintaining the illusion that you could do everything? Because choosing one thing means closing the door on everything else? What would you choose if you were willing to choose? The fourth is, what matters to you when you strip away what is supposed to matter? Not the goals you inherited, not the metrics your culture uses to measure a successful life, but the things that, in your quietest and most honest moments, actually feel important. The fifth is, what is here, right now, that you are missing because you are waiting for something else? What is already present in your life that deserves more of your attention than you are giving it? So as you lie here tonight, at the end of another of your 4,000 weeks, let these ideas settle gently without demanding answers from yourself. You are not behind. There is no behind. There is only here and what you do with it. You are not failing to keep up. The race you think you are losing is not a race anyone signed you up for. It is one you have been running by default, and you can stop running it whenever you choose. The time you have is not a problem to be solved. It is a gift to be inhabited, imperfectly, finitely, humanly, with the full knowledge that it is limited and the full willingness to be here for it anyway. Oliver Berkman wrote this book to give you permission, not to do less necessarily, though perhaps that too, but to be present for what you do. To stop treating your life as a rehearsal for some future moment when everything will finally be in order. This is the moment. These weeks are the ones you have, and they are, if you let them be, more than enough to build a life that feels genuinely, honestly, and fully yours. Rest now. You have done enough today. Good night.